Well, Doc, I finally took your advice and decided to do a session on a movie that I've already seen and already enjoy.
That's great, Tyler, but why are you reviewing a Halloween special right before Christmas?
The truth is, I didn't review it when it first came out because my laptop was busted. I thought it would sort itself out, and I was too cheap and lazy to buy a new one until recently. And also, if a horror movie is so good that you can enjoy it at any time of year, I'd say it's worth the praise.
Does this even count as a movie, though?
That depends on who you talk to. For me, the AFI says a feature length film is at least 40 minutes, and this is 53, so for my money, it counts.
Well, with that said, what is Werewolf by Night about?
Well, in this movie special, whatever the fuck you want to call it, the werewolf is a monster hunter named Jack Russell, played by Gael García Bernal, who participates in a fight to the death amongst fellow monster hunters to see who can kill the creature known as Man-Thing and be crowned new ruler of their society. But he doesn't actually want to be the new ruler, and in order to keep his identity and motives for participating a secret, he teams up with the previous leader's daughter, Elsa Bloodstone, played by Laura Donnelly.
I must say, I hadn't even heard of this movie until you brought it up.
I didn't even know this existed until Chris Stuckman reviewed it a while back, but when he mentioned this was a tribute to Golden Age monster movies like Frankenstein or The Wolfman, and the second he said directed by Michael Giacchino, I knew for a fact I had to check it out.
Who?
Michael Giacchino is the Oscar winning composer of Up, The Incredibles, Spider Man No Way Home, The Batman, among many others. I had no idea that Giacchino even wanted to be a director before being a composer, but like most people, I was blown away by what he accomplished in his directorial debut.
And how does he fare with the Marvel formula?
Well, similar to Sam Raimi with Doctor Strange, it's hard to believe how much he got away with. Neither of these guys were given total creative control, don't get me wrong, and the persistent Marvel cliches that I'll get into later certainly prove it, but I think working with Brad Bird, two-time Oscar-winning director for Pixar, and having won an Oscar for Pixar himself, gave him enough leeway where he can craft something that looked and felt completely different from other MCU movies, the same way that Multiverse of Madness did.
Isn't it interesting that your favorite Marvel movies this year have been horror films with very specific styles featuring darker visuals, violence, and tone more comparable to Marvel Netflix properties?
Absolutely. I will say that I still think Multiverse was more consistently scary and emotionally investing, and I think it's because for every violent moment Raimi crafted, it was built up with insanely surreal imagery, again, by Marvel movie standards, and eerie sound design to make each jump scare feel earned, where in this case, characters just abruptly bump into each other and then fight because of the runtime, and make no mistake, it was still awesome to watch, but had it been longer than 53 minutes, there'd be so many more set pieces and so much more time to build up the suspense and atmosphere that you can do so much more with this one location.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't think either one of these directors were given full creative control. Is that part of the negatives you have?
Yeah, the one glaring problem for me, anyways, was Jack Russell's dialogue, and it, in my opinion, was a Marvel trope even Giacchino couldn't avoid. When we first meet Jack Russell, he's a man of few words, albeit as opposed to a stoic, antisocial loner like Clint Eastwood, he's quiet in an openly shy and awkward way. That was refreshing to see for a horror movie, but it still leaves a lot of his past a mystery. I'm glad they delved just enough about how his powers work and what he does to manage them without giving away too much. Then he starts having normal conversations with Elsa, and he talks like every other generic Marvel hero, where he starts rambling nonsense or being casual about very dark shit while the other characters just look annoyed, and so did I. He has a monologue about his powers where he repeated the same words over and over again so much that it was like watching Daniel Craig's donut speech from Knives Out, only if it were presented as Shakespearean. I mean this with all certainty. Can Marvel go one fucking movie or show where there isn't any comedy? I mean, by this point, Marvel's comedy has the originality of a Happy Madison movie, and the jokes are about as depressing as a eulogy.
Is that all the faults that you have with this?
That is all I have.
Good. Now, let's get back to what Giacchino brings to the director's chair.
I love the retro style Giacchino creates. It brought a huge smile to my face I haven't had with a movie for quite a few weeks now. The black and white cinematography perfectly replicates the Golden Age monster movie atmosphere where characters are shrouded in shadows or silhouettes that feel meticulously lit to make them look mysterious or threatening, or be brightly lit to make Jack look more vulnerable and sympathetic with the lack of darkness covering him, whereas the villains, when they're lit the same way, look sinister with all their repulsive expressions in plain sight.
See, to me, black and white movies made in a modern era always look phony because it's clear as day they shot with modern celluloid or digital cameras, and for all it can mask, black and white cannot hide green screen effects very well, in my opinion.
Giacchino's got you covered there. He inserts grain in the film and even cigarette burns on the corner of the frame that every time one popped up, I actually leaned in closer to the TV in anticipation because I thought it might have been a subliminal clue that shit was about to go down. And you can tell every setting within the film is a practical set or on location. The set design's gothic tone with the hunted creatures stuffed on the castle walls. There's a tomb with its own crank to activate the corpse inside, and it looked fucking amazing. And there's one element that's actually colorized throughout the entire film, a la Sin City, and it actually made me shiver because I didn't know what it was capable of, and that almost neon red makes it look even more sinister.
So, how was the action in it?
The action sequences were insanely entertaining for one specific reason. Giacchino keeps the camera on a tripod or a steady cam.
Thank God.
So you can actually see characters clashing swords, doing really wicked flips and throws. The hand-to-hand choreography and acrobatic stunts are some of Marvel's best in years, and this movie differs to Doctor Strange on the gore front, seeing as how the kills are more explicitly inflicted on human beings, and there's an emphasis on blood. So when an arm is lost or a head rolls, it's equally impressive, and it'll have you watching in amazement just going, holy shit, they actually did that. The finale in particular is the Illuminati massacre from Multiverse times 3 and how many people just get fucking annihilated.
So does Giacchino do the score?
What do you think?
And?
What do you think?
Wonderful, but enough about him. Let's talk about the people who are in front of the camera.
As much as I complained about Russell's dialogue, Gael García Bernal is still pretty good as the werewolf, and he's the kind of Marvel hero I miss where he has a straightforward moral code, but is so professional and polite, even towards his enemies. Despite being a little too dopey when he talks, he's a genuinely wholesome character who's on a simple yet selfless mission, and it's cool to see a more pacifist hero in the vein of Steve Rogers, where there's a non-violent way out of a conflict that no matter how stupid it is, he'll try that route first and foremost, because at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. I don't know how much of those stunts were really Bernal, but sitting in a makeup chair for 4 hours, that's no joke. And he and the stuntman made for some of the best comic book movie moments of the year. It does bother me a little bit that Elsa Bloodstone outshines the titular character in nearly every way, the same way Doctor Strange was more about Scarlet Witch, or 4-4 gave Jane Foster more to do than 4, or...
We've been over this in our Wakanda Forever session. Can you please move on?
All right. Sorry. But still, I can't deny the fact that Laura Donnelly's timing and delivery just nails the cliched impression of what we would expect from a hunter like Jack. Stoic, antisocial, and cold to just about anyone that dares speak to her. But when Jack ultimately needs her help and she starts to show a slightly softer side upon seeing him so vulnerable, it's hard to tell whether or not she's trustworthy. But of course, since this even tributes the classic monster movie message of not judging a book by its cover, you have to wait and see what her true intentions are.
And the side cast?
Nothing all that special. Most of them barely get a line of dialogue, and their designs are so bland and forgettable, but the two who stood out for me were Harriet Sansom Harris, who gets a few good scene-chewing moments as the new head of the secret society. The costumes and makeup on her in the finale made her this ominous threat, and to the film's credit, it doesn't portray her as a one-dimensional villain. She genuinely believes that monster hunting is in the name of protecting the world and honoring her family, despite her not really considering Russell's powers as a way of doing good with his curse. And Richard Dixon in this 2-minute bit as the talking corpse was just so damn cool. I was shivering at the sight of his coffin even opening because I had no idea that was going to happen. I'd never seen anything like that before. And Man-Thing was decent. I'd never heard of him before, so his design looked different from me. It had that cool Cthulhu look to him. his powers were gruesome, and I liked the back and forth between him and the others. That I can't really get into without spoiling it, and yeah, that's all I got. I would have loved to see more done with him in this special or within future movies. Just the fact that he can't really talk and he has this Han Solo Chewbacca dynamic with some of the other characters. I'd like to see more of that.
Well, Tyler, I'm glad that you finally decided to discuss a movie that you've already seen and already know that you love. So, try to keep doing that moving forward with these sessions, okay?
Moving forward, I will do the best I can with that.
That's good enough for me. Well, that's all the time we have for this session. If you have seen Werewolf by Night, let us know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more therapeutic reviews. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out on Patreon. Take care.